So we talked about a 25% reduction. If it's at 2,000 calorie a day, we're talking about 500 calorie deficit per day, which is about maybe a pound a week-ish. How does that change or what have you observed, at least in the clinical or in the lab setting? How is that different for perimenopausal and or menopausal women?
So I have not seen this in the lab, but it's never been studied in the lab, and my lab's starting some of this research. What I have is what I believe are thousands of direct messages, comments back to me as I talk about menopause, and in all honesty, watching my wife go through menopause. What I've observed is what I just described, this 25% caloric deficit will cause weight loss relatively easily in metabolically healthy women. It seems like that does not move the fat loss needle for some women going through menopause.
Who are metabolically healthy or who are not?
I would say even that because I'm obviously I'm very close to my wife. I refer to her experience a lot with this. She was healthy, and then she went through menopause, and she gained weight. And she's married to the best man in the world, and her husband is also a fat loss researcher.
Yes.
And she couldn't lose body fat, and I'm like, this is not good. Like, if I can help you with, and I can't help with much, but if there's one thing, I should be able to help you to lose body fat. And her calories were like 1,100 calories.
God.
For several weeks, and it's just she wouldn't lose it. And I had heard other people say this over the years as a fat loss researcher, but it never really registered. But now I'm seeing it. So I take this, I start talking, asking questions. And the place where I'm at now is it seems like for some women in menopause have no problem losing weight. So this is not a blanket statement. But there is, and I refer to this as kind of like a train wreck group. There's a certain, hopefully it's a small percentage of women going through menopause that have a very bad experience. And part of that experience for some of them is gaining weight that is very hard to lose. So the way that I conceptualize this is what would normally be a 25% deficit to lose X amount of body fat, it might need to be a 40%. Like you have to diet so hard to get this body fat down that it's not sustainable, not enjoyable, and probably not healthy. So what do we do? And this is where I have 1,000 questions because I'm just starting to look into this. Again, a lot of women don't struggle with this going through menopause, but some do, and it's extremely frustrating.
Yeah, and I also wonder as well with the estradiol drop where we see this, the overall trend is down, but certainly in perimenopause it can oscillate quite extremely, especially in the late 40s, early 50s for women. But I wonder if, when you're talking about fat loss, one of the things we know about estradiol, or the main estrogen that we have when we are in our fertile or reproductive years, is that it preferentially, when we are depositing fat, it tends to be subcutaneous fat. And then as we lose that estrogen, we sort of become, and I don't mean this in a derogatory sense but we almost become more male-like, where we start to have this like ectopic fat distribution, where we start to distribute our fat more centrally through a lot of women in midlife. And I don't know if this was your wife's experience or if you've heard this from women, where they just say, like, I lost my waist. Like, I just turned into, like, I went from being a pear where I wanted to lose the pear, but I turned into an apple, where like they sort of lost their waist. So I wonder, it'll be interesting over the coming years as your lab and as you're working through this, if there's a difference in outcome when we're pairing, let's say, pharmacology, let's say hormone replacement therapy, estrogens being the primary one, and even testosterone. Once there's a female approved product at the time of this recording, there's currently not in Canada and the States. There is in Australia, but testosterone and estrogen replacement, estradiol replacement more specifically for women. I wonder if that'll also impact when we pair that with resistance training and the calorie restriction that we've been talking about. I wonder if that'll also improve some of the outcomes for these women.
I think for many women, yes. And I can actually speak to some research. So I'll just briefly talk about two studies. One sets up the other. One study had postmenopausal women do a resistance training program, and then they gave premenopausal women the same resistance training program. So we're talking early 40s, let's say, to late 50s. And there's no HRT in this study, no hormone, no estradiol, no testosterone, no progesterone.
Okay.
Both groups of women responded favorably to the resistance training program. They both gained muscle mass. They both lost a little bit of body fat, but the outcomes were significantly better in the premenopausal women. So they responded significantly better to the same stimulus as an older postmenopausal women. So there's the backdrop. Another study gave women early, that's just key, early postmenopausal women, so think early 50s.
Early 50s, yeah.
An estradiol patch or a placebo patch while resistance training. The estradiol patch women gained significantly more muscle mass, lost significantly more body fat. So we have research in a randomized controlled trial, awesome study, where restoring estradiol levels clearly helped bring back an anabolic response to training, help them lose body fat better. So I look at that research and I'm like, this is it. This solves the problem for all these women. But unfortunately, I guess is how I would phrase this. I have much fewer messages and direct DMs, but still enough to think where women are saying, hey, I'm on HRT and I still can't lose weight and I'm still not responding well. So it seems like it's very helpful for some women, but it is anecdotally, it is not going to solve the problem for every woman. And let me just be clear. I hope to be in my career for another 30 years. This is my passion now. I want to find out why and what. And part of the solution will be pharmacology. In fact, I think it's probably one of the first things we should be doing.
Yeah. And I think, if I may be so bold, I think that I'm a big fan of HRT. I will absolutely be on it when it is warranted for me to do so as well. And I think what I want to maybe, I don't know if the word is caution against, or maybe I'll comment on it, and I would love your thoughts on here. I think that every woman, I think first the issue is access, right? So we have to have the conversation that women, when they're going to their primary healthcare providers, saying that they can't sleep, saying that their body composition is changing, that their mood and their affect, their anxiety, all the things that we know about, the hot, like the very obvious signs, like the thermal dysregulation, the hot flashes, all of that, and then also the more subtle signs like the mood and the affect, the anxiety, the confidence, all these things, like to believe women when they're telling their PCP that, and to have access to the hormone replacement therapy. So that's the number one. But the second point that I want to make is, after that's been done, after we believe women and we give them access to the hormones that they so desperately need, to also understand that the hormones are not going to lift the weights for you. The hormones are not going to build your plate and choose what you eat and what you don't eat. The hormones are not going to set healthy boundaries with your family or your career. Like that has to happen with you. And this is where, I was talking to you offline about a couple of subjects that I want to broach. And I think here is where we will broach one of them, which is we can't abdicate our responsibility in terms of some of these lifestyle choices that we've been talking about. Like, we've been talking about the calories in part for most of our conversation. We'll get to calories out in a moment. But I think that we can use HRT, or MHT as it's more accurately called now, as a tool to help ameliorate some of these symptoms that we're talking about, the body composition changes and having this anabolic response, which is awesome. But you also have to do it with the resistance training. You can't just take the estradiol patch and then sit down like you would in a body, if we look at bodybuilding in the physique world, we don't just give people testosterone and say, okay, you can just sit down and like watch TV now. Like, they still have to go to the gym and work. Like, you still got to put the work in. And so this is where I sort of what I often find with pharmacology in general, and again, feel free to weigh in and tell me that I'm dead wrong or you agree or anything in between. But I feel like so often we jump there as the primary solution, and we abdicate our own involvement and our own ability to affect the change that we're looking for.
Yeah,
Would you agree?
I think,
Not agree? You think that?
No, I 100% agree. And there's even arguments that you want to have your lifestyle kind of in check so that the hormones that you're taking can do what they're designed to do. Right. So it's a very good point. And are we Do we have a plan to exercise? Are we doing our best to not consume an excessive amount of highly processed foods? Do we prioritize sleep? So these lifestyle factors go hand in hand with the hormonal environment. So I love that you said that.